First of all, isn't this nice? Isn't this nice?
This is nice.
I am very happy to be looking at so many faces right now, but I'm as confused as you are about the television cameras, which is why I hope you'll indulge me to read from notes tonight. You see, in everyday life, I naturally speak like I'm sitting in a dive bar. My wife has grown used to it. My daughter has grown used to it. My future sainted mother has grown used to it. Adam, Jimmy, and some of the folks at the Goat, hi Kirk, in Dallas, one of the state's jewels of dive bars, have grown used to it. But I grew up in a time when you couldn't cuss on live TV. It was a kinder, simpler time we called the 1970s. And besides, the great literary light Charles Bukowski once wrote, the best part of a writer was on paper, the rest was usually just nonsense. And I tend to agree with him there. And so it is safer for us all and probably more interesting if I don't do what I normally do and wing it. Like when we went on the Texas Dives World Book Tour, which visited 13... Oh my God, we're working here. We're working here. Which visited 13 bars in Texas. Most of them were the bars that we featured in the book. Salty language is fairly common in dives, although it's not like I've ever come across anyone in a bar that was specifically there to drink and drop the F-bomb. Except maybe Kirk. But I assure you, we have not come here tonight to do either. I'm going to do as much reading as possible, although occasionally I may look up. Look up now. Oh, hi. May the heart of your God be well disposed towards you. That's the first line of a Sumerian drinking song from about 4,000 years ago, which tells me that we have all gathered together tonight in fellowship. Is it better that way?
Yeah, he'll raise it up.
Oh, okay. It is, well, I was talking about that we've met tonight in fellowship and celebration with history and somebody's God on our side. Now, a Mavericks fan, a Spurs fan, and a Rockets fan walk into a bar with a chicken. The bartender says, "No way, we don't do jokes in here." The chicken says, "It's okay, I know a good place across the road." Thank you. I wrote that yesterday, and after what we've been through, your reaction didn't really surprise me. We're here because there was a book published last August by the hallowed Texas A&M University Press called Texas Dives, Enduring Neighborhood Bars of the Lone Star State. That's this book right here. It's covered with all the stickers, but as it turns out, I'm Anthony Head, and I wrote the damn thing. Sorry, one cuss word got through. And that guy is Kirk Weddle, and he shot all the beautiful photographs in the book that you'll be talking about tomorrow because nobody reads anymore. We want to thank Tom Keener and everyone at the Allen Library who got in touch with us last year to book us for tonight. Back then, our book was newly released, and we were underway with what turned out to be one of the best book tours any author could ask for. It was memory-making. Which reminds me, a guy with amnesia walks into a bar. He walks past the bartender and up to the best-looking gal in the joint, and he says, "So, do I come here often?" All right, thank you. Can you just imagine how much fun we had on the book tour? Buckle up for tonight. Obviously, in lesser hands, this book, God, I keep giving myself notes. This book could have turned out to be one of those crappy guidebooks that are ultimately dismissive of the subject. Most writing about dive bars is so ineptly cliched and intentionally unfair that it's no wonder the word dive has come to represent something to be avoided, or at least pitied. It didn't really start out that way, though. You could be forgiven for thinking that every dive bar in Texas is filled with fools, miscreants, and backbiters, because some of them have a few of those characters. Of course they do. But every place, even a library, has fools, miscreants, and backbiters. That's just the human condition. Dives are honest and courageous enough to admit that fools, miscreants, and backbiters are among their clientele, which also includes carpenters, electricians, married couples, salespeople, bingo callers, Fort Worthians, entrepreneurs, third shifters, vegetarians, college professors, beautiful women, freelancers, and millionaires. We've met them all. Kirk and I set out to produce something honest, a novel subject that we didn't treat like a novelty, and we ended up with a book that sold out of its initial print run in 3 months. It became a bestseller in a couple Amazon.com sales categories. The book was covered in, I think, 8 Texas newspapers, including the Dallas Morning News 3 times, thank you, Big D, as well as on public radios, the Texas Standard, and in or on nearly a dozen different other media outlets, such as Texas Monthly, Texas Highways, Lone Star Literary Life, Austin's KOOP Radio, KZSM, Radio San Marcos. And where's the camera? Hello to everyone in San Marcos, at Showdown, and over at Riley's Tavern. And of course, while we're up here in these parts, how about a shout out again to the GOAT in Dallas and a Great Notion over in Fort Worth. Hi, guys. We were also featured in the Wall Street Journal. Kirk and I met in 2006 in Austin, and since then we've crisscrossed the state many times over for professional reasons, which has been writing and photographing Texas alcohol culture, including Texas vineyards, breweries, distilleries, wineries, and a hell of a lot of bars. In 2018, we really started researching, writing, and photographing this book, and we finished the first draft of the manuscript around December 2019. A couple months later, COVID hit, which is why there was a bit of a lag in getting this out. But since COVID subsided, I can confirm that what goes on in this book, just pretend I'm holding up the book, what goes on in this book still goes on in bars across the state. Now, I noticed when I used the word COVID, I guess that's still fighting words somewhere. And that reminds me that a conspiracy theorist walks into a bar, or maybe she doesn't. We're probably never going to get to the truth about that one. Our book profiles 12 bars in 12 parts of Texas. These are places that we'd visited before, as well as those that were recommended in some way or the other to us. Like the very first bar in the book called La Perla in Austin. I remember the day Kirk discovered that one and told me to get my hinder over to it. Old school cantina, pool table, jukebox, small, formica-topped 6-stool bar, only serves beer. It was a classic, just sitting quietly on the corner in East Austin, looking like a haunted house from the street. And we didn't just stop by these places for an hour, take pictures, and leave. We went back, sometimes 6 or 7 times, just sitting around getting to know people, listening to their stories, listening to them explain why they love their bars and the people who own, work at, and frequent them. As far as we know, this had never been done before, not in book form. After the book was published, I think our travels were history in the making too, because I can't find evidence of another author carrying out a book tour in a string of dive bars. Right here, there's the proof. I've checked out all the biggies with notorious reputations like Father Charles Bukowski and Uncle Hunter Thompson, Sister Dorothy Parker, and even Brother Ernest Hemingway. Some of these bright lights of letters wrote in bars, wrote about bars, and some may have read aloud a verse or two and maybe a page while hanging out. Apparently, none of them took their published works back to those same bars for proper acknowledgement and celebration. Doesn't that give us a Guinness World Record? Yes. Thank you. I could go for a pint of stout right now. How about you, Kirk? Yeah. Not only that, but this being Texas, we brought along a musical headliner. Sid Grimes is a singer-songwriter based out of Austin. She's got chops, and she volunteered to play at nearly every show. I think there were some stops that she moved more CDs than we moved books, but it was so much fun. She brought the house down. Like I said, this tour was more than any author could have asked for. We got the bar owners up to accept some well-deserved recognition from the community and their regular customers. And I got to tell a lot of bad bar jokes, like a Bitcoin walks into a bar. You know anything about Bitcoins, Kirk? I don't know anything either, so that's the end of the joke. Back at the bars, when we started selling books, now something pretty marvelous happened. The regulars passed the books around for autographs from their friends. And you remember yearbook day in high school? That's what we had in dive bars all over Texas. People were running to get autographs from their friends, telling stories, pointing each other out. It was actually quite heartwarming. I also know of folks who have begun their bucket list travels with our book in hand. Dive people are always happy to pass along recommendations. You going to Houston? Check out Warren's Inn. They'll treat you right. Headed to San Antonio? The Texas Tea on Broadway? Ask for Terry. These are what we do. As I wrote recently for Texas Monthly, if you're looking for peaceful coexistence, people in a dive bar can help. But now, for a change of pace, I want to turn things over to my buddy Kirk Weddle, photographer extraordinaire, who I'm happy to say has received quite a lot of well-deserved praise for his work in this book. He's got some things that'll make you happy. And I also wanted you to know that Kirk and I have worked before. This is a book called Spirit. It's a biography of Jesse Trevino. You may have heard that name recently. He's a San Antonio artist who passed away in February. But I was very honored to be able to write his biography. And Kirk took some of those pictures. So we don't spend all of our time in bars. And Kirk will prove that right now, if we can get him up. Come on, Kirk.
All right, so I'll just, kind of run through the work that was in the book. We hit 12 bars.
Closer to the mic.
Okay. We hit 12 bars. Good call, guys. I'm not a public speaker, so I'm giving this a shot. 12 bars, like 12 cities, thousands of miles. And they were unique places to photograph, the people and the places. And I like this one. I just like the light that bounces around on the ceiling and the fact that they've got a pallet and a bunch of empty boxes in their bar.
A wizard in Galveston.
In Galveston, yeah. And we had there was a hurricane that night. Yeah. And so we were the only people in the bar, except for these guys. We did have 3 customers show up. So what I'm trying to do is just get a little slice of life, where, at some point they forget that I'm there. I kind of back off a little bit, and I'll try and stay close to this mic. And the pictures look a little bit grainy, a little bit noisy, but that's kind of what you got to do in order not to disrupt these people. And this is a happy accident. This is the bar in Austin, but I was shooting the other people, and this girl just walked in the back door.
Yeah,
and so
this was during the
World Cup.
From the last World Cup.
Right.
At La Perla.
Yeah.
Great.
And many of these bars have little guys hanging out. So there's dogs, and there's cats, and weird bicycles.
Her name's Kitty Cat.
And I was surprised to find out that a lot of the bars were women-owned. This girl owns the Texas Tea, correct?
This is Adela Fuller.
Yeah. Very cool chick. And this is a guy, Anthony's got this thing that he thinks the bar is the cleanest bar that we ever been to. And so that guy is responsible for keeping it clean, and I just kind of enjoyed taking his portrait. This is out in Hunter, Texas, which is not even a town, I don't think. But a very cool bar, and they have the first liquor license, 000001, after Prohibition. You guys,
Riley's Tavern, it's a honky tonk out near New Braunfels.
Can you grab a mic?
Who, me?
yeah, it's in my chair, man. What?
Hello? Yeah, so Riley's Tavern is near New Braunfels, and this is one of them. Go ahead.
Okay. And just a cool couple. You just don't know who you're going to meet when you're in these places. You hang out there long enough, you wait, so I'm trying to balance the lighting and get a little background thing, and I just love these two guys. That's the exterior of Riley's, which is by like some monstrous gravel pit, and 10,000 semis go by every moment of the day. Another, this is our girl in Houston, is that?
Yep, that's Alice.
Alice.
And Alice is Tall Texan
Yes.
in Houston, which unfortunately closed after the pandemic.
Yeah, it's been interesting going on the book tour, in that we shot the book and it takes so long because of COVID to get it printed and then go back, and everybody's changed, and you reunite with these people, and some people have changed for the better and some have changed for the worse, and some have lost limbs or digits, gained a massive amount of weight, lost massive amount of weight.
Stopped drinking.
Stopped drinking or started drinking more. This is one of my favorite shots in the book. It's just a cool portrait of a really nice guy. And it's all, I don't know if you'd call it natural light, but I didn't light anything there. I just like the lighting.
Can we talk about that?
Yes, we can.
One of the things I wanted when we were researching this was I wanted readers to look at the photos and really understand that they're in the bars. So with very, very few exceptions, I told Kirk, don't light it up, no filters, no nothing, so that somebody doesn't read our book and then go to these bars and not recognize them. So Kirk did an incredible job of shooting in some of the darkest caves in Texas.
Yes. And this is the, I don't know what they call it, like the patio out back at a bar, but a lot of them have an area where you can go smoke cigarettes, and it's just such a different vibe of being in a dark hole versus being in the daylight.
And this is at the Goat.
The Goat,
in Dallas.
that's a local bar, right?
Great,
Yeah.
great bar in Dallas.
With very bad wiring. Almost all these bars, I would take a picture of the wiring just to look at it and go, oh, my house is not so bad. Okay, we are at
College Station.
Yeah.
Dudley's Draw.
Right. These guys have they've got what do you call it? A Big Mac, I think. It's sitting just to the right of this guy, but this Big Mac has been there for about 20 years, and
Oh,
it
in their
still
cave.
looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
I don't have a
I think
photo
an
of that.
archaeologist put
Yeah.
that in there to see
all
how
right.
long it would
This is the food they serve there.
It's called the Breakfast Shot.
Yeah, I got to partake in that.
That's Jameson's, orange juice, and
And
some type of buttered rum type of
And a
schnapps.
piece of bacon.
And a piece of bacon.
Yeah. It's
And
got
that
all
guy
the
over
four
there actually did
food
it.
groups, yeah. This is the only time I was scared on our tour. We didn't have any rough moments, no tough bars, but this place, the frat boys like to beat on that punching bag. And I'm like, oh, I would not want my face to be there. This is another local spot, right?
Fort Worth, a
Fort
great
Worth,
notion.
Yeah. This girl kind of started our maybe the concept of the book.
I think that's true. This is Linda McWilliams. Unfortunately, she also passed away a couple years ago before the book came out. But Kirk and I, and it was in 2013 maybe, we were just doing work, as we always were. We stopped in at Miners Bar down south in West, and Linda McWilliams was there, and she just said to us in the sweetest voice, "Y'all passing through?" And we stopped, and that was where I turned to Kirk and said, "We got to do a book."
Yeah,
Because-
and she's a quintessential Texas woman, with her DP and her long cigarette. Quite the girl. This is also another fave of ours.
That's Finn at
Finn.
La Perla in
Yep.
Austin. Great bartender.
Another hurricane in the background on the TV. Yeah. And so this is West, and really cool bar, which I think is for sale now.
That's what I saw too.
Yeah. But I just love the ceiling, the floor, just the vibe of the place.
Been around well over 100 years,
Yeah.
the building. And it's been a bar for about 60 years.
Right. This is way up north in the Panhandle.
This is San Angelo.
Isn't that the Panhandle, or it's
Yeah,
not the
this
Panhandle?
is Saddle Bronc
Okay.
in San Angelo. That's Bruce, one of the owners.
Right. This is one of my favorite shots in the book. They don't allow dogs in this bar, but they let this guy carry him around.
We got him on the bar too.
Yeah, exactly.
We almost got in big trouble.
Uh,
This is Shorty's. Anybody ever heard of Shorty's down in Port Aransas? Port A?
You guys know
Shorty's
Port
may
A?
be the most famous bar in Texas. It's known as the oldest and friendliest in Port A. It certainly is incredibly friendly. As you can see at the top, their thing is they hang old trucker caps and baseball caps from the roof, from the ceiling, and it's as disgusting as you think it is. But you cannot beat the bar for friendliness. Good prices, too.
There we go. There's old Shorty's. And there's your spot, Anthony.
That's that's Showdown in San Marcos. It's one of the oldest businesses still operating in San Marcos. It's been going on since the 70s.
That's the guy just delivering meals. And that's my bar talk, guys. So I do, besides just shooting pictures in bars, do a little bit of underwater work. And this is kind of an older shot. This is a little baby dolphin I shot in the Bahamas. Spent a week out there, you know, trying to be like a National G kind of guy. And you play a lot of poker and wait for the dolphins to show up. This is for a microbrewery, Dog Bite Beer. It's a dog diving into a pool. Sea lion in the Channel Islands in Southern California. Some water polo boys. These guys were so strong and so athletic. I told the coach, I'm like, man, it'd be so cool if we could put a bleacher in the pool. And he's like, they can do it. And these guys just picked it up, chucked it in the pool, and held their breath forever, you know, while they took that, and then picked it up and took it out of the pool. Yeah. Just a recent portrait I've been doing. This is my claim to fame, which is, I think, is like 30 years old now. Yeah, 30-something years old. I have a book coming out about this too, if it ever gets released. This was how I set it up. I practiced on a little baby doll, and this picture of the kid, they stripped a dollar bill in it, which was a really innovative thing at the time. So it's just a baby in the water that I did. But the whole shoot with this guy took maybe 3 minutes. You know, it was back in the day when I was shooting film. So I shot a half a roll of film, and I put this guy in the water. His parents were on one side and the other, put him in, bang, 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 pull him out, he's good, we did it again, bang, 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 he starts to cry and we're done, you know? And I didn't know who this band was, and I'm like, yeah, maybe the album will come out, maybe it won't, we'll see. But apparently it did well, you know? And that was an alternative shot I did, just to try and give these guys a little choice on what they'd want to see. So anyway, the band did turn out to do well, and the album cover called me back and had me photograph the band. That's Kurt Cobain, and I didn't understand at the time that it's not a good idea to shoot a band in the morning, and I thought that 10 o'clock in the morning would be okay, but it wasn't. So he was 2 hours late, and he showed up and went right to sleep as soon as he got there. And nobody knew what to do, so I kept shooting the other guys in the band, and we covered him up with a bathrobe, put his guitar next to him, and shot a few frames of that. And then he finally woke up. There's the boys together. That's a shot I kind of like a little bit. And it was tough because these guys were on tour, so I just had them for maybe a couple hours, and they were off. I shot in LA, and then they were off to San Francisco for a gig that night. This guy went on to do pretty well too. I think he's got a band now, if I'm not mistaken. He was the best of the crew. This one's kind of a heartbreaker for me. I knew that Kurt had some issues, but I didn't think he was going to go out the way he did. And then I shot old Weird Al doing the same thing. That was a very strange shoot too, in that he's got a massive amount of body hair. And I'm kind of freaked out about hair, and I don't have much of my own. And he has a massive amount of body hair. So it was floating everywhere. But a fun guy, enjoyed his company. That's me going to work, and that's the beast that I use to take these pictures. Big, heavy housing. It's a little bit, it's a nice rig, but it's a lot to work with. All right. So this is what the first stuff I shot when I came to Texas, which has been, believe it or not, the longest I've ever lived anywhere, 16 years. And I was impressed with, when I went to Green Hall, and they had this, I thought he was a Texas Ranger, but I think he was a sheriff, but he was checking IDs, and I was just so blown away by the cinematic quality that I did a bunch of Texas sheriffs. They're all Texas in the hill country. And this guy, when I set the lights up to photograph him, and he was out chasing a bad guy. I could hear him on the radio, huffing and puffing, and he didn't catch the guy. So that's why he looks kind of pissed off. This was one of the, kind of like Anthony and I worked on this shot together, did a story on this girl who sort of revolutionized the bar scene in Austin for a while, Bridget Dunlap. And this is a woman who makes hand-rolled cigars, and she's quite the character. And I think this might be one of my last shots in Texas, but this is down at, where is that, in Houston? Yeah, it's, anyway, it's the world's largest indoor swimming pool. I was dying to shoot in that pool. They got a space shuttle in there. They've got the Soyuz capsule. She's a real astronaut. They would not let me get in the water. Broke my heart. And all right, this is my last shot. I was set up to shoot an 80-year-old blues guy, and did the pre-light. The guy never showed up, and this little kid walked into this bar and just sat down there, and that was my shot. All right, I think we're done. You want to do your slideshow, the book tour? Okay, man. Here's your stuff. Thank you very much.
All right. So, what did you do in my microphone? I'm going to give you a little bit of a reading from the book, because we're in a library, and I've got a book, and you should probably figure out what the heck we're talking about. So, let me open up to this. Oh. Okay, this is a short reading from a chapter on the goat. I've mentioned it a couple times. It's here in Dallas, or it's in Dallas. You should check it out. It really is a wonderful, homey place. I think they're opening these days around 8 in the morning, okay? So there's almost no excuse not to get there. The name of this chapter is called Buddy Guy, Where Are You? The Goat in Dallas. Taking a seat at the bar is a real treat because it's a long, narrow, formica-topped serpent of a thing that starts near the front door, curves several times like a lazy river, and after making a hard turn, stretches its other end some 40 feet away. It's an S-shaped bar, only it's a rippled S, an S with some extra groove. The edge is padded to cushion elbows and forearms, and the whole thing sits on a stone and brick foundation. The bar is a thing of beauty, one of a kind, and a good place to sit with some coffee and whiskey and wait for something special to happen. At 10 in the morning, there might only be a dozen people drinking at the Goat, but they fill out the room nicely. It's not an especially large place, but in addition to that magnificent bar, there's room for several tables and chairs, a pool table, and a raised stage, looks like about 3 inches tall, big enough for a 3-piece combo. Against one wall is what appears to be a plutonium-fueled high-def ultraplasma jukebox, capable of summoning any song on the planet. And lo and behold, near the front door, between the candy machines and the casino games, there's a working cigarette machine, sightings of which are becoming so rare that such dispensaries have become the unicorns of dive bars. Of course, plenty of places still sell smokes, but usually from behind the bar. These vending machines are getting tougher to spot and are destined to go the way of the spittoon. There's just something in the Goat's character that expresses familiarity and nostalgia. The classic smoke-filled bar of yore, minus the smoke. Such a setting is ideal for daily encounters with the unacquainted. Quote, once we got an award from some local publication that named us the best place to have a conversation with a stranger, says Adam Testa, who's been GM of the Goat for about a decade. Taking a seat at one of the bar's lesser curves, he says, all walks of life hang out here. Everyone's talking to everyone. All pretensions seem to be dropped when you come in here. One particular time, a guy came in who looked, well, to be honest, he looked homeless. He sits next to a very well-dressed man who eventually just throws down his Amex Black card, and these two are buddies for the rest of the day. It's not crowded now. The glowing jukebox is playing John Lee Hooker. The music level, like the Goat itself, is comfortable, making it easy to talk to strangers. A couple women playing pool stop to grab another round of beers and vouch for the loving and special people on both sides of the bar, calling the whole group of regulars a family. A few seats downriver, a guy drains his beer, leans over, and uses the word simpatico several times while describing the chemistry of the room. In addition to sharing a common fondness for the Goat, most everyone here is also simpatico in avoiding the place come nightfall. It's hard trading a comfy evening on the couch for the more competitive climate that comes with such nightlife. Oh, sure, maybe if somebody like Buddy Guy showed up to play, they might make the trip here after dark, but what are the odds of that happening? Quote, it'd be great for him to play here, says owner Bill Weiss, speaking of the aforementioned blues guitar legend. It would be, too. When Buddy Guy launches into Dust My Broom, his guitar is an incendiary agent. He can turn the nursery rhyme, Mary Had a Little Lamb, from a simple walk to school into a gritty sonic journey to the funky side of town. Forever underrated, Buddy Guy is currently the backbone of Chicago blues. Now, I'm sorry to say here that Bill Weiss, the owner of the Goat, died last year before the book came out, and we'll miss him. But Bill was a fan of Buddy Guy's, obviously, so in late 2018, when he heard that Buddy Guy was coming through Dallas, he put the word out to anyone who might have a connection to be sure and invite Buddy to drop by. Not only that, he had large white polka dots applied to the walls behind the Goat's stage and around the front door as a tribute to Buddy's affinity for wearing polka-dotted shirts and decorating his guitars with polka dots. Then everyone waited for him to show up. We haven't seen him yet. Bill takes a sip of beer and then makes it clear that he's not delusional or anything. Buddy Guy's not keeping him up at night. After all, he's got a bar to run. The guy sitting next to Bill is Jimmy, and he nods along. Most neighborhood bars have a guy like Jimmy. He is the goat's right-hand man, the guy who starts out one day doing a little cleaning and then some maintenance, and before long, his projects are what help keep the place looking and feeling the way it should. On occasion, his work stands out. It was Jimmy, in fact, who personally adorned the goat walls with all the bold white polka dots. Maybe he'll drop by, Jimmy says of Buddy Guy, not all that convincingly. But tomorrow, we'll be making the patio a little more conducive to our regular outside patrons. A lot of interesting things happen on the patio. That's where the neighborhood gossip gets passed around. Movers, carpenters, electricians, they're all there. Then Jimmy stands to leave and sings, "You can get anything you want at Alice's restaurant and our patio." Before he gets out the back door, he clarifies that his take on the old Arlo Guthrie song referred only to networking on the patio. In other words, you can't get everything you want at the goat. About a month later, without a doubt, the laws of the universe allow that anyone could walk through the front door, even someone wearing a fancy shirt that matches these walls. But no, Buddy Guy hasn't stopped by yet. Quote, "He does come through Dallas from time to time, but he's always booked up for a concert," Bill says with a slight nod. "Some of the musicians who play here know him a bit. It'd be nice if he heard about us through the grapevine." While we wait, a guy named Brad asks me, "So, you want to hear a good goat story?" Of course. Brad and his girlfriend Brandy, it turns out, are a lovely young professional couple and the kind of strangers you hope to sit next to for a couple rounds. They're relaxed but adventurous, and it comes through in their story, which is indeed enthralling. But it's also long and meandering, not unlike this pleasantly curvaceous bar, and Brad and Brandy tell the tale interchangeably, so it needs decoding and summarizing. Plus, it needs a bit of Purell as it unfolds. We begin with them drinking at the Goat, where they meet a guy named George. They all drink together for a while, then leave. George says some odd, inappropriate stuff in the car before they hit a strip club and a couple of Asian massage parlors. That's followed by a harrowing ride crammed inside a Maserati with a really creepy guy at the wheel. At some point, an ex-Playboy bunny enters the story as an Uber driver and attempts to invite herself back to Brad and Brandy's place. Quote, "She wanted to charge $1,000 just for the honor of touching her boobs." Shortly after that, this tale of Dallas depravity comes to an end, which is right where it began, with Brad and Brandy back at the Goat. The bunny's boobs have at least been seen. They were okay. But there is no mention of money or whatever became of George. It's the friggin' Odyssey, as retold by Brad and Brandy, and it's totally unbelievable unless you know a little something about the Goat and the people who come in here. Once inside, this place becomes exactly what people want it to be. And so I believe every word. Whether or not the possession of such an existential state of being favors the Goat enough to pull in Buddy Guy to set that little stage on fire has yet to be determined. In the meantime, this long, shapely bar remains a really good place to wait for something very special to happen. Thank you. That was just part of the chapter. There's a lot more to get to. So let's wipe up here. What was I going to say? I was going to say thank you. Now, think about trying to do what I just did in a bar when somebody didn't really turn off the jukebox. They just kind of turned it down a bit. And there are still pool games being played, and really, most of the people sitting at the bar aren't paying a damn bit of attention. But again, we knew what we were doing, right, Kirk? And it was great because everywhere we went, we found people happy that someone else was paying attention. Somebody listened to them. Everyone's got a story to tell. We just went looking in dive bars to prove the point. Old neighborhood bars are experiencing a resurgence of interest and respect. The label dive has become a badge of authenticity and endurance, which of course leads to abuse. I mean, here we are trying to reclaim the word dive from the dark side of our language, and some new bars, brand new bars, actually open up and immediately call themselves dive bars. They're designed to look beaten up by time and curated with precisely strewn bric-a-brac. While it's clear that dives have moved up the social ladder, this development of faux dives is Disney-esque. But, that's okay. No one's judging, except us. But it gets worse. Did you hear the one about the bar up on the moon? Great drinks, but no atmosphere. They laughed a lot harder in Houston for that one. But it gets worse than that. People take things too far. Last August, Miller Beer and something called Tipsy Scoop released an ice cream bar that tastes like a dive bar. It's a true story. You're asking yourself, what does a dive bar taste like? Well, I don't know. But the Food Network actually ran a story, and the ice cream is infused with beer, making it up to 5% alcohol by volume. There is peanut swirl to reflect the peanut shells always found on the floor of those bars. Now, we've been to 150 bars in Texas in the last couple of years. How many peanut shells? None. They also add tobacco smoke flavor, and really, other than a few outposts, that taste is, about 10 years too late. The makers then dumped a bunch of nonsense on the thing, including caramel, something called carbonated candy, and dark chocolate. Even within our society's current gluttonous gestalt, this is offensive to our moral character. I've seen photos, and I promise you, the thing looks like the floor of a bus station. And I mean no disrespect to bus station custodians. It's gross. But still, the dive's main role in Texas culture is to persist. And since alcohol is a scientifically proven social lubricant, our book focuses on how these are the places that lubricate the Lone Star State's love of figuring out how to solve the world's problems on a daily basis. But I want to say that this book and our mission was never about drinking. Yes, when the IRS says all your bar tabs for the rest of your life are write-offs, it's a pretty good thing, I'm told. We especially love the lower liquor prices and the stronger pours. I mean, who doesn't? But it's about so much more. One thing we learned was that women run about just as many dives, if not more, than men in this state. These places are family, hand-me-down businesses, sometimes for 3 generations and still going. Another thing we learned is that every regular thinks their bar is Cheers. I cannot tell you how many times we heard that and how we often still hear it. And it's a beloved show. So what does that tell you about dives? Did you know that Diane, from the very first episode of Cheers, when she breaks down and accepts a job at the bar, is everyone on page here? Everyone know what I'm talking about? Here's where Diane nails it. She says, I am a student of life, and where better than here to study life in all its many facets? People meet in bars, they part, they rejoice, they suffer. They come here to be with their own kind. Which is why I like to say that whatever dive I'm in, it's never the same people, but it's always the same crowd. We also want to acknowledge that there are some cockadoodie bars out there too, and they're called dumps. And there's a difference. And my future sainted mother can tell you the difference between a dump and a dive. A dump is actually where life gives up. It's a place that's intellectually unreachable by choice. A dump is determined by who comes in the door, who sticks around, and who comes back. A dive is where life endures, albeit vulnerably. But I'm not a class warrior. A while back, somebody asked if I was a dive bar archaeologist, and I thought, hey, I'm from Indiana. Indiana Head. That works, right? Indiana Anthony probably sounds better. But I did dig up some pretty interesting stuff about jokes. For instance, I found out the very first recorded form of the old "a guy walks into a bar" joke was written by the Sumerians in cuneiform on a tablet dating back to Babylonia, possibly 4,000 years ago. Now, this joke, and I'm not making this up, this joke has been translated a couple ways, but this is it in its entirety. 4,000 years ago, a dog entered a tavern and said, "I can't see a thing. I'll open this one." Thank you. Thank you. Now, that's the whole joke, and no one knows what it means. No one can possibly tell you what it means. But everywhere we went on our book tour, some chucklehead found it funny, and I like the joke. It gets funnier every time I tell it. So I just thought I'd bring a little culture to the library to make some friends. And you know, my future sainted mother said to me the other day that because of all our traveling, we probably had a lot of friends around Texas. And you know what? It's true. And there really are a lot of places where everybody knows our name. Because here's the universal truth. A dive bar is essentially a conversation that's been going on for a long time. You can have your say too, but it's going to go on after you leave. So enjoy it while you're there. The bar itself is just an ongoing conversation. So here's the last one of the night. An angry man walks into a bar, pulls out a 6-shooter and growls, "Which one of you varmints slept with my wife?" Now the bartender looks around and gets very quiet. He looks around at all the people in the bar. Then he looks back at the gun and he says to the guy, "Mister, you're going to need more bullets." Ooh, yeah. All right, you can catch Kirk and myself currently every month on austinmonthly.com. Our column is called The Deep End, and it covers capital city dives. What else? Hello to the O4 Lounge, Don's Depot, La Perla, El Camino, Casino El Camino. I would urge you to go to sidgrimes.com. She was our musical headliner. This guy knows. I have personal knowledge that she's about to drop some pretty heavy stuff. She was always wonderful on the tour, and our heart goes out to her. Kirk's work can be found at kirkweddle.com. There's a link there to buy our book. I'm at anthonyheadworks.com. There are links for a lot of crap there. Anything else? Goodnight, Glinda in Galveston and Alice in Houston. Of course, we love you, Michelle and Tracy, and all of our dogs. Please don't drink and drive. Let us close tonight with the end of that Sumerian drinking song from earlier, the one that started, "May the heart of your God be well disposed toward you." What makes your heart feel wonderful in itself also makes our hearts feel wonderful in themselves. We are in a happy mood. Our hearts are joyful. You have poured a libation over the faded brick, and you have laid the foundations in peace and prosperity. Now may Ninkasi was a Mesopotamian goddess of beer and brewing. Now may Ninkasi dwell with you. She should pour beer and wine for you. Let the pouring of the sweet liquor resound pleasantly for you. Good night, and, well, wait, I have one more thing about dive bars before I leave. This is important. There's one we love. We showed pictures of it. That, by the way, is Sid Grimes, our musical headliner. There's one we love in San Angelo called Saddle Bronc, and as you can imagine, that's West Texas. That's tough country. That is the land of Elmore Leonard. That's really hard living. This bar called Saddle Bronc is owned by two good people, Bruce and Isla Johnson. Their bar is in the book. Great place, good-hearted people, tough as nails people. In this bar, Isla charges you a quarter if you use the F word. I'm serious. Look at this T-shirt. This is a T-shirt that Saddle Bronc brings out, Saddle Bronc, 204 East Avenue L, San Angelo. On the back, it says, when is the F word acceptable? And she lists 10 times. I cannot read them all. We're in mixed company, but let's see. How about, what the F do you mean we are sinking? And that's by Captain E.J. Smith of the Titanic in 1912. This is a good one. You want what on the effing ceiling? That was Michelangelo. Here's a good one. Oh, no, I can't tell that one. Where the F are we? Amelia Earhart. Okay? So she's very serious. Isla is serious about that, and you can either pay up or you can leave the bar. And a couple years ago, she had collected enough cash, true story, to buy all of her regulars steak and lobster dinners. Now, I don't know about you, but that tells me two things. One, don't ever judge a dive bar until you've been there. And B, steak and lobster. Apparently nobody gives a about Isla's rules. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Kirk. Thank you for coming out tonight. We're going to run up there and sell books if you want to buy any books. We might answer some questions before we go. Did you really think I was done? I've still got 17 more pages.
Have a seat.
All right, I'll have a seat.
Oh, there's my. You got one?
No, thank you.
I'm going to ask a couple questions, and I'll come down to the audience, and y'all can ask as many as you want. This is the library. You can say what you want, criticize, questions, comments, protest. I guess one of the questions I have, anything I've ever written, there's always a challenge. And I've written a lot, and it seems so. I know I've had a lot of challenges. Can you tell me one of the challenges you had in writing the book? And I'm sure one of those challenges was you had hundreds of bars that you went to, and you only could choose so many.
It's tough. Yeah, it's really
Oh,
You-
that was so
yeah.
hard. The research was so tough. Kirk and I have been doing this. Kirk and I have been doing this since 2007. And that's been our job, is to actually go around to bars, wineries, and places like that. So we had a couple hundred to choose from. But in the end, it basically came down to what I wanted.
Yeah, it's good to be the king.
Yeah, it's good to be the king. It was tough. There are so many great bars, but we really did want to stick with dives. And there's no technical definition for what a dive is. The word dive was put into the English language to refer to a bar that, and I don't even believe this definition, but you used to go downstairs to the basement to get to this bar. So apparently they called it a dive. I don't believe that. That just doesn't make any sense to me, because bars were everywhere. But since then, a dive has come to represent something of ill repute, a bad reputation. And that's what we set out with this book to do, was change people's perceptions about dive bars. They are not places to be avoided. They are absolutely places to be enjoyed, to go into. And Texas has an awful lot of them everywhere. So you're right, it was tough picking out 12.
Well, the idea of a dive bar used to be cigarette-filled smoke, mobs, people from the mafia lurking around the corner, and you knew there was going to be a fight or shooting at any point. And what you presented tonight looked very peaceful people.
We ran into no problems, and these are only the 12 we put into the book, but there were, like I said, we've been to several hundred, haven't seen problems, never run into rude people. Texans love talking about themselves, talk about things they love, and dive bars are places where people let their passions come out. So we just found so many people telling us this is just like Cheers.
Last question, I'm going to turn it over to the audience, but one of the things that impressed me about your book, it's not about the drinking.
Thank you.
It's about community.
It's about fellowship. Yeah, and that's where everyone kept telling us was, we take care of people here. Everybody treats everybody like family. Now, we know how families can be, but everyone seems to treat everyone like family. And there is an unwritten code that the rules of a dive bar, the etiquette of a dive bar, are enforced on both sides of the bar. So not only are the bartenders looking out for the customers, but the customers are looking out for the bartenders. So if anybody, for any reason, causes a problem, you've got a problem on both sides of the bar. There's an article in Texas Monthly that you can look up online. It's basically how to become a regular in a dive bar, and I wrote it. And it was rules that are enforced in every dive bar we've ever come to. So it goes against this Hollywood dime store novel cliche that a dive is the outskirts of the town. It's not. Dive bars are very community oriented. They always have charity elements. They're always collecting toys for tots. They're always collecting for veterans. They're some of the nicest social clubs, but they have the ill repute. They have the reputation. And that's really what we set out to do with this bar, was just kind of knock down that reputation a bit.
When I was in college, we went to the dive bars because they were the cheapest options out there. And it wasn't necessarily, and we didn't go for atmosphere.
Well, there's very little atmosphere. I mean, some really are. The Goat, I love the Goat's atmosphere. It's dark. It's got twinkle lights. There's just no agenda at a dive bar. You can't say that about a disco or a pre-prohibition era cocktail lounge or someplace like that. They have agendas. A dive bar just is there to persist. It's just there to open up in the morning and start serving its customers and close down at night. That's what it is. So what the people, the regulars, make up the character of the bar.
You know, you hear on the television all the time about on airplanes, people punching somebody out or something like that. And from what your pictures show, that is...
Never happened.
We never saw that. The owner of Riley's Tavern in Hunter, that's probably, other than the San Angelo bar, the most out there bar, the most rural bar that we went to. And the owner there tells me the days of the big bar brawl are over. And that's because the regulars don't want that. The bartenders and the owners don't want that, and everybody works together. And that story about Isla with the F word and buying all that food for her regulars, that's true. She does it every year. And okay, so she gets a lot of money, but she enforces it, and so does everybody else. And that's what I really liked about these places. They were social clubs, and if you knew the rules going in, you got along with everybody. So,
I'm going to come down to the audience, and this is your time to interact with the folks who've been all over the state.
We never had any problems in any bar. The only problem we sometimes had was we just didn't want to leave. And we weren't sitting there drinking all day. We were sitting there talking to people and photographing, and we were working. But everyone was just so nice. It's exactly the opposite of what many people think goes on. So we're proud that this book exists. There are a lot of people who just had stories to tell, and we gave them a chance to tell it.
Questions, comments?
Anybody got a
protests?
question? Should I call on somebody?
Right here.
So what was the most unusual thing that you saw in one of the bars that you didn't put in the book?
You may have to research that one.
Not everything's in the book. That's a good question. We put all the best stuff in the book because you could. I don't know.
I shot a picture of every bathroom, but that didn't make it in the book.
think about that.
Questions, comments?
How you doing, Kent? It's good to see you out here.
Now, you look like you have a question. Okay, hold on.
Where is the closest dive bar from this library that you would recommend?
Well, I think Tom would know that, but I can't stop talking about the GOAT in Dallas. We used to go to Ships. That kind of changed. It changed locations. So we're not very familiar with Allen. So you might be able to tell me.
What's the best dive bar?
Yeah. You think you know everything?
What do you got?
Have you guys been to the Garhole?
Well, that's what Tom's talking about.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a great.
As a matter of
great
fact, I'm
roadhouse.
taking them to the Garhole tonight.
All right.
I've never been there.
Well,
But it's a converted old bank into a bar. And I think they serve burgers, but the focus is not the food. It's they do live music and that sort of thing.
yeah.
It's Garhole, and it's
Gar-
located technically in Anna, but I think it's in the old town of Westminster. I'll find out tonight.
You know, when you were asking about how we slimmed down to this, Kirk has accused me many times of having my dive radar tuned a little too precise, but a good dive has a jukebox. Now, you're not going to find vinyl in jukeboxes anymore, but you can still find CD jukebox. And why that's important is because the other kind of jukebox is it hooked up to the internet or a satellite. Every song on the planet is available. That's not what a dive bar is. A dive bar has a jukebox that's been personally curated by somebody. So every CD in there is meant to be in there to form the character of the bar itself. We don't need to hear Islands in the Stream when we're throwing back a couple bourbons. Another thing I like about dives is no food. I don't like food in my dive bars, but they're there. They have to make a living. So
You don't like food, period.
well, I don't like food. But what else? Kirk, you like the vibe. You like the ambiance.
Absolutely, and I like the price of the drinks
And the price of the drinks. They're cheap. They don't
and the speed.
But use your mic.
My mic doesn't work.
Are you sure?
I'm sorry, but does my mic work? Oh, well, I guess you put it next to your face, it works. I like the speed. I don't like nothing against high-end place, but mixologists that are making beautiful drinks that take 20 minutes to manufacture that cost $25 is really not my cup of tea. And so it's nice. Even a brewery is tough because everybody's got to sample the beer and decide how much hops they want, and so the speed of just a can of beer that's sitting in ice is a thing of beauty on a hot Texas day.
Yeah, we knew Alice in Houston. She used to own Alice's Tall Texan, and she stayed cash only till the end of her bar because she liked the speed. Right. She didn't like running cards through meters and things like that and having people sign them and everything like that. So that's another real good plus is if a bar is cash only.
Which is really fun to watch young people freak out over that.
Yeah.
You know?
Did you say it was Riley's that was the first one after
Yeah,
Prohibition?
Riley's.
Riley's
Yeah.
first after Prohibition.
Questions, comments, protests? Our author and photographer will meet you back. It's your chance to get them both signed, get the book signed by both of them because they're here tonight. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you all for coming out. I cannot believe that.